Mitchell, if you're out there, there you are. uh, I've made you a co-host. I don't know if I need to do that, but I did it because it seems to make it easier to share. Might not matter, but I do it anyway. So you can share your screen at any time. And I have a bio for you. I can introduce you while you're getting hooked up there. Mitchell is the end user support specialist for the Invasive Species Database Team at the New York Natural Heritage Program. Mitch provides help and training for users of the iMapInvasives database and data collection tools, in addition to delivering outreach programs for iMapInvasives. Before joining New York Natural Heritage Program, Mitchell received his master's in natural resources from the University of New Hampshire in 2018, where he studied the geographic distributions of terrestrial invasive plants. Mitch has also worked as a Watercraft Inspection Steward in New York State, surveying boaters and inspecting watercraft for aquatic invasive species. So Mitchell is going to present on the aquatic invasive species and some of the SAS Pro application that Lisma is going to be using this summer. Welcome, Mitchell.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk to you all today. We've talked a lot about aquatic invasive species today, and now I'm going to focus on how you can report those to our centralized database. So I work for the New York Natural Heritage Program. We do a lot of biodiversity monitoring work, rare species work. Steve Young and Megan McCormick, who are on the call, are also part of this program. And we're a partnership between the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation and SUNY ESF. And you can learn more about us at our newly launched website, NYNHP.org. And the part of the program that I work for is the Invasive Species Database. So our focus is conserving biodiversity, and invasive species, of course, threaten biodiversity. So that's where the Invasive Species Database program came from. So our main task is managing iMapInvasives, which is our centralized database in New York State and used by several other places in North America. But we work on some other projects as well. So Ashley mentioned the Watercraft Inspection Steward program. So we manage the survey that the stewards use and the database that comes from that. And we also work on some modeling efforts to help managers prioritize invasive species efforts. So for anyone new to IMAP, it's the centralized invasive species database to support PRISMs, state agencies, and other partners working on invasive species issues. Of course, you can view species distributions and report invasive species. We also have functionality for early detection alerts. So if you report a high priority species in Long Island, for example, someone from LISMA probably has an alert set up, so they would get that right away and be able to decide whether an immediate response is necessary. Our data is also available as a web map service, and you can track control efforts and results. So where does the data in our database come from? So in the earlier years, it was mostly coming from uploads of existing data sets from other partner organizations. And then through the years, it became more important. The more records have been coming in through people recording new data on invasive species directly into the database rather than these bulk uploads of existing data sets. So the yellow is the existing bulk data sets. So you can see that kind of is very large in the first several years, but goes down. And then these green bars represent data coming in through our mobile app and our online system, which have grown throughout the years. And we always like to recognize the many different partners, so the agencies, all of the PRISMs, universities, et cetera, who helped get IMAP up and running and have also continued to support us. And so as I mentioned, now a hugely important source of our data is current data being entered by community scientists and professionals across the state. And we have a system in place where records go into the database as unconfirmed. These could be records from PRISM staff or agency staff, but also tons of records from volunteers and citizen scientists. So we have experts across the state who have the ability to review records and confirm them. So once records have been reviewed, they can be confirmed. And so today I'm going to give a brief overview of iMapInvasives, and then I'm going to discuss our various field data reporting tools. And the one I'm going to focus on is Sas Pro, which stands for Simple Aquatic Survey Pro. So then I'll give a live demo of that, and then questions and wrap up. So I'm going to jump into a brief live demo of the iMapInvasives online interface. So you can get there from our website at NYIMapInvasives.org. There's a lot of other stuff on here. You can get to that spotted lanternfly, tree of heaven effort that Haley was just, or no, sorry, that was Abby was discussing that earlier today. But to get to the database itself, there's this login button on the top right. And so that brings you to this page here. If you have an account already, you can sign in up here. You can use the forgot password if you haven't signed in a while. If you're new to IMAP, this box down here is where you sign up, your basic information, and then your jurisdiction. For most people on the call, that's probably New York State. It's the state where you'll be collecting data. And once you hit join, you'll get a little box that tells you to go check your email for the activation link. So make sure you check your spam and junk folder if you're not seeing it, and follow the link to the terms and conditions that you have to accept. And then your account will be active and you can log in up here with your username and password. And it'll bring you to a page, to this page, shows the map of data across North America. You can see, well, so there's this pop-up of any recent updates. So you can cancel that out once you've read it. You can see there are a couple other jurisdictions across North America that use iMapInvasives. And just to give you a brief feel for where things are, there's the main menu up here. Oops, I accidentally clicked. There's the navigation tools, so zooming in and out, zooming to your location. You can enter an address. On the top, we have action tools where you can create records and filter on a species you're interested in. And then on the right, you can look at the geographic layers. So to start, I'm actually going to go into my account to show you something that you will need for if you want to use Sas Pro. So there's a couple things in the main menu. You can look at the species list for New York, which is the jurisdiction species list, or the network-wide species list. But if you go to your account, you can see your basic information up here. So your name and email and stuff like that. One thing I'll draw your attention to is the person ID. So this is your unique identifier in iMapInvasives. And for some of our more advanced data reporting tools like Sas Pro, this is the ID that you use to link your records to your account. So I'm gonna write that down for myself. So for when I'm showing you Sas Pro. And if you want to try out Sas Pro, I encourage you to also get your person ID. And on your user page, this is also where you can join organizations or projects. So a lot of IMAP users don't need an organization. including volunteers, citizen scientists, people using the app as an individual. But if you are doing invasive species work as a part of your job, you may want to join your job's organization. So that you do that by pressing edit in the top right, and then scrolling down to this organization box and requesting to join an organization. And then if you were a new LISMA staff member, you would type in LISMA and whatever organization you may be a part of. But again, a lot of people don't need organizations, so I'll just cancel that for now. And I'll go back to the map. And so I just wanted to show you one example. So say I want to look at water chestnut in Long Island. So up in the action tools, one of the most commonly used one is the filter tool. Sorry, I'm in a room with motion detectors. So there's a lot of things you can filter on. I'm going to filter on species. Type in water chestnut, and then apply the filter. And then I'm going to zoom in, so you can zoom in with the plus button. You'll see that at this scale, the points, all the invasive species points are summarized in these hexagons. The larger orange circles mean a larger amount of data. But eventually, once you zoom in, you'll get to a scale where the points can display, and those orange hexagons will break up into green points. So you can see the points show up there. And then so in this geographic layers section of the website, you can do all sorts of things. For example, you can change the base map. I'll change to a light gray. It might be easier to see what's happening on a webinar with that one. You could also use the satellite the satellite imagery if you were looking at trying to get somewhere specific, and use the imagery for that. Layers on off is important to keep in mind. So you see these green points. Those are the confirmed presences, because that's all that is turned on right now. But you can also look at unconfirmed presences. And so you can see a couple pink dots pop up. So maybe these water chestnut records haven't been viewed yet. Maybe the person didn't include a picture, but they have not been confirmed yet. There's also not detected records. So this yellow point just popped up. So that's where someone looked for water chestnut, but it was not there. And there's, of course, a legend to explain those as well. And the one last tool I wanted to point out on here is that you can actually create records, submit records on the online interface. So there's this tool called Create Record. And you can, for instance, create a presence record. You could also do not detected, or if you wanted to do multiple records in one area or one searched area, you could do that with this button. Just to briefly show you, I'll click presence. You can decide whether you want to drop a point or trace out a polygon. When I'm creating records, it's often useful to use the satellite imagery, so you can really zoom in and trace out a specific area. But I'll just drop a random point for display purposes. And if you want to play around with the system, we have this species called a fake species. So that's what I'll use right now. So you can just drop a point wherever you want to test out how all the features work and everything, without having to have an actual invasive species detection and not have to worry about affecting our database with fake data or anything. So we have this species designated for that. And you can see once you pick a species, you can add a photo, which is really important for people to review the record and confirm it. You can answer some, fill in some fields about the infestation. But all of these are optional. So the main thing is the location, the species. It'll automatically capture your name and the date, and then you should add a picture. And then you can just complete that. Let's see, and then there are some more advanced functionalities you can also get into if you're interested in it. So you could make email alerts in the main menu. You can create distribution maps in this add distribution layer and shade in counties or water bodies where an invasive species is found, and all sorts of other things. And while I was in here, I also wanted to show you an example of a record that had been entered through Sas Pro, which I will show you later. I forgot to save the link to it, so I'll actually show you that at the end. So I'll switch out of this live demo now, go back to the presentation. So that was a brief overview of the interface. So you can submit all sorts of records there, points, lines, polygons, presence, not detected treatments. But of course, you need to have internet connection to use the browser, or to use the online interface in your browser. So we've also developed, this has been around for a while, the basic mobile app. It's a really simple tool for collecting presence and not detected records as points, and you can use that out in the field with no connectivity. But that's a very simplified version. It doesn't have all of these capabilities that some people need. So we've also created some advanced field data collection tools. And so these allow you to do advanced data types like lines and polygons and do treatment records, all without connectivity. And an example is Sas Pro, which I'll talk about soon. And all of these records, they go into ArcGIS Online, and then they're crosswalked into this same Imap platform. And from there, they generate the, trigger the email alerts, just like records from the mobile app or in the interface, and they're available in the web map services. And this is a full table of all the data collection options. I just can't see the top of my screen from the WebEx tool, but so there's the mobile app is the most basic one. Then there's the online, and then the NatureServe iMapInvasives Survey 123. So these are sort of the tools that have been available to pretty much anyone for a while. And then on the right, we have the more advanced tools. So there's the Sas Pro and Imap Mobile Advanced, which is more for treatment. And for the past few years, these have been more only used by PRISM staff and agency staff and a couple other individuals. But this year, we're kind of opening up Sas Pro a little bit more. So it's a tool that's available to more people. So it's really useful for aquatic surveys. It was really built around rake tosses, but a couple other survey methods have been integrated since then. And one of the key features, I'll explain in this slide, but so what is Simple Aquatic Survey Pro? It's a form within Esri's Survey 123 app. You can record advanced aquatic surveys, including, of course, invasive species that are detected, but you can also record native species that are detected, which you can't do in most Imap apps because it's designed for invasive species, but we specifically added in native species to this one because it's important to record the natives in this case. And then there's also the ability to record invasive species that you looked for but did not detect. And all of the data field, or most of the data fields, map to Imap data fields and will turn into Imap presence records in the crosswalk. The exception would be the native species data will just stay in the ArcGIS Online Sas Pro database, but only the invasive species data goes into iMapInvasives. And like I mentioned, last year it was a pilot with New York State agencies and PRISM staff. This year, even more PRISMs are using it, and it's being opened up a little bit more to non-PRISM and non-New York State agency staff who do these sorts of advanced aquatic surveys. And so some of the benefits are, of course, it standardizes the way that aquatic invasive species surveys are recorded across the state. You track species distributions all in one database, so it all goes to iMapInvasives. It facilitates the analysis of change in abundance over time. So we have fields where you can, in Sas Pro, where you record like the percent abundance or the relative abundance of a certain species on the rake in your rake toss, for example. And it will help build and maintain institutional knowledge. So which species are surveyed and found, which methods capture which species, so which species are detected in rake tosses versus other methods. And you get to survey both invasive and native plants, and that gives you a baseline so that if you do some control efforts, and you can then assess the relative abundance of native and invasives after that and see what the effects were from that control effort or treatment effort. Other benefits are, of course, like the mapping benefit, where surveys across the state and from different years are all visible and viewable within this one centralized database. And Sas Pro also has an option to capture the number of work hours if you want to record that. All the records go into Imap, which has some reporting tools that you can use, and you can track management efforts in Imap as well. And so I'm going to go into a little bit more about what the data flow is for Sas Pro. So first, data is collected on a tablet or smartphone in the Survey 123 app. And then it goes, once you click upload, it goes up into ArcGIS Online, which is the cloud version of ArcGIS. And from there, it gets crosswalked into the iMapInvasives database. And there are a couple different ways for this to happen, really two main ways. The default option is just that once you upload your record, it'll be in the next batch to go into iMapInvasives. It'll just go straight in the database as unconfirmed. The other option, which is what a lot of PRISMs and state agencies have taken advantage of, is you can do data review within ArcGIS Online, and then the data can go in as confirmed. So an example of this would be, so a PRISM like LISMA, the staff go out and do aquatic surveys, and then the team leader will look through the records, check the species, make sure everything looks good, and then mark the record as reviewed. And then that can just go straight into the database as confirmed, and not have to do the review process within iMapInvasives. Another option would be like for any effort where there's a team leader and a group of staff or volunteers who do aquatic surveys as a team effort, this data review within ArcGIS Online can be useful. But for today, I'm going to focus on the more simple method, which is just you record the observation in Survey 123, and then you upload it, and it just goes into iMapInvasives as unconfirmed. If you are interested in learning more about the ArcGIS Online component, we are doing another training on June 1st at 1 p.m. So I'll put my email at the end of the presentation, but you can email me if you're interested in attending that. So how do you access Simple Aquatic Survey Pro? The first thing you need is Survey 123 on your device. So that's in the App Store. It's an app created by Esri. And you can then go to your browser on your device at nynhp.org/imap/saspro. And that will bring you to this page and that big gray square on the top. If you click that, it will open up this survey in your Survey 123 app. One thing I'll mention is that we have a base map built into the survey. So it'll take a minute or two to load and make sure you have some good connection. On my iPhone, it only took about 30 seconds to download, but I have heard on Androids that it can take maybe 3 minutes, and it might have like a weird error message. But if you just tap OK, it really downloaded fine and it works fine. And generally, I'd suggest using the continue without signing in, because you don't really need to have a ArcGIS Online account to use the survey. And I'll show you that in a second. If you were interested in the ArcGIS Online component, then there's an extra step where you would join our ArcGIS Online group, and you would do that by emailing us, and then you would log into the Survey 123 app. Before I do a live demo of recording data, I wanted to explain the Imap data schema. So this is the data schema that all records in iMapInvasives have to follow. So there's a searched area, polygon, and then within that polygon and associated with that polygon, there can be presence records. So those could be points or polygons or lines within the searched area where a species was detected. There can be not detected species. So those are species that were not detected in the entire searched area. And then there can be treatment records within the searched area. And so Sas Pro focuses on searched area, presence, and not detected, but does not include treatments. So there's a searched area polygon, and within that you can record presence records. For example, you could have a point for a rake toss, which would then include a record for each of the species found at that rake toss. Likewise for traps and some of the other survey methods we have in Sas Pro. Plankton net toes are recorded as lines within that searched area polygon. And then species that are not found anywhere within the searched area polygon are made into not detected records. And just to reiterate, you can collect both native and invasive species in Sas Pro. The data goes into iMapInvasives, and any field with a corresponding IMAP field will be crosswalked into that field in iMapInvasives. And just to show you what that looks like more visually, so you draw a searched area polygon on the map. There are some fields optional fields you can fill in about the searched area. So description of the site. If you need to record the time spent surveying, you can record that there. Details on the weather, if that's relevant. Again, most of those are optional. And there's a new functionality this year where you, at the beginning of the survey, you select your target list of species. So for example, say you're doing a rake toss and there are 5 invasive plants in particular that you are searching for. So you can check those off, and I'll explain what the benefit of that is in a second. All right, and then so you have your searched area, your target species list. The next thing is to select what survey methods you're using. So there's a general question about top versus underwater versus shoreline surveys. And then there's the more specific survey methods. And I'm going to focus on the rake toss. So if you select rake toss in the survey, you are prompted to draw a point where you conduct a rake toss, and then there are some fields to fill out. And that's where you can record which species were detected in the rake toss. So you answer some questions about the abundance, you can fill out some comments, and very important, there's the opportunity to attach a photo. And if you detected multiple species, then you can add those in. So you can have, at that point, you would have this searched area with one point within it with multiple species. And you can then add another rake toss if you're doing multiple rake tosses at one location, and then create records for however many species present you found. And so where the target species list comes into play is that, say you had 5 species on that list, 5 species that you ticked off on that list. Then in the rake toss, you found 3 of those species. Those 2 species that were on your target list, but you did not find, those will automatically be turned into not detected records without you having to specifically create a not detected record. So that's something that should save time this year compared to last year. Just to go into more detail about that, so there's probably like 50 species on that list to choose from. Even if you're familiar with all of those species, generally we would say that your target species list is not going to be that entire list. It's going to be a subset. For people new to aquatic surveys, it might be 5 species. For people more experienced, it could be 20 species. And you should be keeping your survey method in mind. For example, if you're doing a rake toss, the species on your target list will probably be macrophytes. In theory, you could come across snakehead, but that's not really what the rake toss survey is designed for. So you wouldn't want snakehead on your target species list, even if you have your eye open for it. And so say you had 5 species on your target species list, but then you noticed this other species and it turned out to be an invasive species you were not familiar with. That's not a problem. You don't have to go back and update your target species list. You can record species that were not originally on that target species list. Really, the only reason for that target species list is to create not detected records for anything on that list that you did not detect. And another thing that will be used, another way to leverage that is to use the favorites feature. So say you conduct 50 rake tosses in a day and you know that you're looking for just these 5 specific species in all of those rake tosses. You can set favorites so that those 5 species will just be automatically selected for every single one of your rake tosses. And so anything that you don't find will be turned into a not detected record automatically. Just a couple of tips that I will show you in a minute, but I wanted to preface them here. I'll go into how to use that favorites feature. You can change the font size if you're having difficulty reading it, for instance, on a bright day, squinting at the screen. And I did want to mention that there's this new functionality in the Survey 123 app, where if there are any updates to the survey, so if the Invasive Species Database Team makes a small change to the survey or something, and we publish that change, you will get a notification up here that there's an update available. And so you can just tap that whenever you see it. But in general, those are small changes and there may not be any updates this year. And so now I'll go into a quick live demo. And you can take a minute or two breather because I'm going to switch my screen share so that it will look nicer. And I'll also type in the chat the link to the Survey 123 form if anyone wants to follow along. Oops. All right, so the link's in the chat, and I'm going to reshare my screen. All right, so now you should be seeing Survey 123. I'm using it on the desktop, so it will look a little bit different than it would look on a tablet or a phone, but it looks pretty similar. So I would generally suggest using this continue without signing in, especially if you don't use ArcGIS Online. So this will just bring you right into the survey. And I'm getting this notification because I'm on a computer, but your tablet or phone should be GPS enabled. And so Sas Pro is in my list of surveys because I followed that link and downloaded it. And when you click on it, you have an option to collect at the bottom. So I'll click collect. And so the first thing I'm going to do is show you the favorites feature. So I'm going to go and fill in the handful of fields that I would expect all of my records to have. So for instance, my name, I don't want to have to type that every time. So I just want that to go in automatically. My Imap person ID, which I just looked up, and it gives you brief instructions on how to find that if you ever forget. But that's why the favorites feature is very helpful, because you won't have to remember it if you just have it saved in your favorites. If you have an IMAP organization or project, it shows you how to get those IDs. And so you'd have to go online and check. But again, if you save it, then you would only have to do that once. And then one thing that might stay constant would be the target species list. So I'm just going to select a fake species. So if you're testing, just always only use fake species. There it is. As you can see, there are many species here, so you can select as many or as few depending on what your comfort level is. All right, so I've input the basic information that I don't want to have to type every single time. So now you go to the main menu, which is on the top right, and you select set as favorite answers. And nothing happens visually, but that's just how it looks in the app. It has saved those answers. But what you do need to do to finish this, and it doesn't really show you that you have to do it, which is unfortunate, but you go to this X button here and you save it as a draft. And so that's where those couple of answers are stored. They're here in this draft, and that's how you can use them for future surveys. So now whenever I want to go to collect a survey, I go to collect. And I don't know my person ID anymore, but luckily I can just paste answers from favorite. So those are all set, and my target species will also be selected. All right, so when you're actually creating a record, the first thing you want to do is collect a searched area polygon. So typically this would zoom to your location, but my GPS is not enabled. So I'll go somewhere in Long Island. I know there's a water body there, okay. So let's say I'm doing an aquatic survey at this pond. I'm going to walk around the entire pond doing rake tosses. So in that case, I could say my searched area is going to be the entire pond. So I clicked this polygon icon, and it's lighting up, so I can drop points. So you do this by tapping your finger on the screen. If I did have GPS enabled, this button would be lit up. So this button with the little crosshairs, it just drops a point where you are geographically using your GPS. So for example, if I was at this pond in person, I could walk around the pond and drop points just by using this without having to find where I am on the screen. One thing I will note is since that map downloaded with the survey automatically, this map will show up even if you are outside of connectivity. If you do happen to be in connectivity, you could switch to a satellite imagery, for example, that might help. But that would probably not load if you did not have good connectivity. All right, so I'll keep tapping around the pond, and you can see I've already made a mistake. So if this happens, you can click on a point and move it. As you're getting used to it, you might find that you just accidentally tap the screen and it gets very messed up. So what I do in that case is I just start over. So just go down to the bottom right-hand side and say that you're done with it, but then click this button again to just redraw it. So it'll ask you if you want to replace it. I'll say yes, and then I can start over and drop those points again. And if you drop one wrong point, they have this handy feature to just undo that. All right, and I'll say that's good enough. So I'll say I'm done. If I see an issue, I could use this edit to redraw it, but I'll just say I'm done. And I encourage you to practice that polygon drawing before you go out in the field. It's a little bit finicky, but once you get the hang of it, it's pretty fast. And so then you can scroll down through the fields. If you happen to be at a state park, we have a list of water bodies you can select from. If not, you can just ignore that field. One thing I will note is you won't see it on my screen, but if you're on a tablet, sometimes when you open up a field, the keyboard will appear, and if you decide you don't want to fill out that field anymore, it's hard to get rid of the keyboard and it seems like you're stuck. So what you do is, well, on my Apple devices, what you do is you put your finger above the keyboard and you slowly swipe down, and that will send the keyboard away so you can keep going on the survey. If you're on an Android, I think you can click the back button and that might help. So try that if you ever get stuck. So I already filled out my fake species as not detected. So I'll just scroll past that. So there's these searched area fields, and I want to note that these are pretty much all optional. So these are, if these are pieces of information that are useful for you. So if you give all of your sites a site name, if you like to record these different features, if you like to record the weather, then I encourage you to do so you have that data, but these are not required information for iMapInvasives records. These are just for your convenience. Something people have utilized is recording their travel time and active time because it makes it easy for them to record that all right in there. So that's just to give you a sense for what those fields are. I won't take time to fill them out right now. And so now you have your searched area, polygon drawn, your target species. So now you're ready to record specific surveys. So you can pick your general survey method. For example, if you're doing survey on the top of the water, underwater, or on the shoreline. So you would pick which one of those is relevant for you. And then you pick your specific survey method. So I'm going to focus on rake toss today because that's the most common one. That's what the survey was first built around, but there are several other methods if you do some of these more advanced techniques. So I will click rake toss and you will see some fields popped up. So this is where you can add rake toss locations. And the first question is asking which method you want to use. This only affects one field. So it's whether you want to record the abundance of the species on your rake as a percentage or as a on a scale from sparse to dense. Most people do this one, US Army Corps of Engineers / Cornell / CSLAP / DEC. So for this method, you select between sparse or trace, sparse, moderate, and dense, I believe. If you are parks water quality staff, then you would probably want to select this one where you record percentages. But in general, what most people use is this one. So if you're not sure, just go with this first one. And then you want to record where you're doing your rake toss. So click this plus button. And you're prompted to create a point again. I believe if you press this button, it would just drop a point. But if you want to see the map interface, click here. And it would just bring you to your location. Oops, spelled that wrong. I'll just search to get to where I am, where I did my previous survey. And so, or I did my searched area polygon, sorry. So I'll say my first rake toss was done at this corner. I'll drop that point. And you can move it around if you want to by moving your screen. So it drops it right at the center of the screen. And I'll say done. And so it shows you where that point is. If you give each of your rake tosses an ID and record water depth, you can put that in, but it will automatically take the time. And then the first question is the whole rake abundance. So just looking at all the plants on the rake, not paying attention to which species they are, how many plants are there? So is it tons of plants, dense, or was it no plants, 0? So I'll go with 3 for now. Once you've selected that, you can then record those species. So just to recap, you have a survey, you have a searched area right now with 1 rake toss location, and now you're entering the species at that location. And I'm going to do fake species because this is a test record. And you can record what the abundance of that species was. I'll say it was moderate. And then very important is to take a picture because this is what will be used to confirm your record. So you can either use the camera on your device or you can go into your photos with this little file button. And then you have these options to add more. So I'm going to stay up here first. Always look at this blue text if you ever get confused. So do you want to add any more species at that rake toss? So if I had detected multiple species, I would, at that 1 rake toss, I would click plus, and then I could record that second species and record how abundant it was and take a picture. But I'm not going to do that. So the next option is add, remove rake toss records for this survey using the icons immediately below. So this is if you want to add another location that you did a rake toss at. So I'm going to click plus. And again, you pick out a point. So I'll say I walked around the lake a little bit, or the pond, and line up the crosshairs where I want the point to land. I'll say I did a rake toss right there. And then check. So I have that first rake toss location. So this is showing the second one, actually. If I wanted to go back to the first one, I would go to this arrow here to see the first. But first I have to select the whole rake abundance. So I'll say moderate again. And so what species did I find at this rake toss? So I found fake species again. And moderate. And then of course, take a picture. And so that's the second presence record at that second point. And if I wanted more species at that point, I would click here. If I wanted to add another point, I would click here. If you want to make changes to your first location, you can click this button to move over to the first one. So say I was considering doing another rake toss, so I'll click here to add a third one. But then I ended up not performing it. One thing to make sure to do is to remove that one rake toss, that third rake toss that I didn't actually do, because it will think that there are fields that you have not filled out yet when you try to submit it, if you leave those blank fields. So just make sure if you open something up and then don't want it anymore, make sure you delete it. So I have a searched area polygon, and then I have one rake toss point with one species associated with it, which is the fake species. And then I have one more rake toss, which also has one species associated with it, and that's the fake species. So at that point, I will say that I am all set. In theory, I could do more rake tosses, but I'm just going to do these two for demonstration purposes. So click check. And if you are online, so you're connected to Wi-Fi, you'll have this option that says send now, which would immediately update it to ArcGIS Online. In most cases, you'll just have these two options. So either continue the survey or save it in your outbox. So usually you'll want to save it in your outbox. And so now you have a couple different things back on the main page. You have the collect, you have the draft where your favorite answers are, and you have the outbox where the surveys that you submit are. So I'll click on that and it will list any surveys you have recorded. And so say you're out in the fields, you record 10 surveys. Once you get back to the office, then you should be able to upload those records. So when you're connected to the internet, you'll have this send option. So if I click send, and I should mention, you could also go back in and edit it with those three dots. And so now you'll see my outbox bar is gone because it's empty. And now I have this sent box just to see which ones you've sent. So that means the record is now up in the cloud. It's not in your device anymore. And it's either going to go straight into Imap as unconfirmed, or if you're part of some team effort, then it will get reviewed within ArcGIS Online and then go into Imap. One last thing I want to show on here is how to change the font size. So that's in the main menu. Oh, sorry, you have to go back one. The main menu of when you first open Sas Pro and go into settings, and then this text option, and you can slide the text to your preferences. All right, but that's what I wanted to show on Sas Pro. So now I'll go back to my presentation for my wrap-up slides. Excuse me, trying to get my lights back on. I guess they won't right now. All right. So I have 2 more slides. So thank you everyone for listening to my presentation. I encourage you to play around with Sas Pro by submitting fake species records. If you do decide that Sas Pro is going to fit your needs this year, I encourage you to contact us. So like I said, up until now, Sas Pro has mostly been used by a handful of professionals across the state who we communicate with frequently. So as we're opening it up to more people, we're interested to know who you are, and we want to make sure we get you set up with whether your records should go in as unconfirmed, or if you're part of some other effort where your records get reviewed in ArcGIS Online. We like to keep a handle on that. So as you test with invasive species data collection tools, if you decide that Sas Pro is the one for you this year, please email us. And with that, I'll take any questions if we have any time. You can contact us at iMapInvasives@dec.ny.gov or visit our website at NYIMapInvasives.org. And I also wanted to highlight a couple of upcoming webinars we have. In a few weeks, we have the Imap Certified Trainers Network webinar. That's if you want to conduct trainings for iMapInvasives. So we always are happy to get people involved with that. And I've been surveying PRISM staff and current certified trainers, and I'm synthesizing everything that we've been finding so that we can come up with some new directions for the certified trainers this summer, so that people have more of a clear idea of what the expectations are and that sort of thing. On June 1st, we're having a more in-depth Sas Pro training, which will include that ArcGIS Online component if you're interested in that. During ISAW week in June, we're doing a webinar on the spotted lanternfly and tree of heaven effort that Abby was talking about earlier, as well as Tom Algeier. And on June 30th, we'll be launching the mapping challenge. So that's a citizen science challenge we run each year to get people across the state to record invasive species. And this year, like last year, we'll have 2 aquatic invasive plants, so water chestnut and frogbit, which we all learned how to identify earlier today. And you can register for most of those at nyimapinvasives.org/training. So the June 30th one isn't up yet, since that's 2 months away. And the June 1st one is not there either. So if you end up wanting to use Sas Pro, I had asked if you would email us. So feel free to also ask us about that June 1st training if you'd like to learn more there. And that's the end of my presentation. I'll open up the chat box to see if okay, I don't see anything. So I'll hand it over to Bill if there's no questions.
Well, thank you, Mitchell. That was excellent. Very good.
I actually have one question, but thanks, Mitch, for the great presentation. If you have a team in the field, is it like only one person can be collecting data at a time? Because I know in Collector, it can kind of be like multiple people using the app, but with this, it's only one?
Oh, that's a good question. So multiple people can use it, but like in Collector, there's the option where like there's one searched area and you're all collaborating on that one searched area. That is not a feature in Sas Pro right now. So multiple people could be using it, but you would be making your own distinct records. So if there was like a pair of people doing rake tosses together, you'd probably just want one device where you're recording that in one record.
Got it. Thanks.
Yeah.
Mitchell, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Can you change the search area after you've entered records? Can you go back and change the search area?
Yes. So yeah, like say you walk beyond where you originally thought and do another rake toss, you can just scroll back up to the top and go in and edit that searched area. And if you do the ArcGIS Online review, you could also review it at that point. But it is, of course, good to do as much as you can while you're recording it so that once it's uploaded, it's pretty much ready to go.
All right, thank you. If
Yeah.
anyone has questions, you can please put them in the chat. We're looking at the chat. And the June 1st webinar, that goes farther into what?
That will, so it'll be pretty much it would just be a repeat of how to record data, but the new thing that it will have is how to do the ArcGIS component, if the ArcGIS Online component, which not everyone who uses Sas Pro will use.
Okay. Gotcha. Well, I have a question about volunteers. Is there one of the prisms that's known for using volunteers with this? Or is there a volunteer group this has worked well with that you know of?
Yes.
Or maybe you don't need to name them, but if you know of something.
Yes, I do know of one. So the Adirondack Mountain Club, they run a program called Backcountry Monitors, and they have a team of, it varies from year to year, but like from 5 to 10 people who go out to remote water bodies in the Adirondacks, and they do rake tosses and record them in Sas Pro. And then those records are all reviewed in ArcGIS Online, and then they go into iMapInvasives at the end of the year.
Yeah, that's super. We would love to do something like that on Long Island.
Cool.
Maybe a friends group or some other groups.
That'd be great. One thing I didn't think to highlight, but in like when I showed you the map of when you log into iMapInvasives, there are tons of records you can see, but most of those records are terrestrial plants. So aquatic invasive species, aquatic invasive plants in particular, are one of our most underreported taxonomic groups in the iMapInvasives database. So we would be really excited to have more recording data into IMAP for those sorts of species. It would be super helpful for a lot of the analyses and stuff that come from the iMapInvasive data set. For example, those invasive species tier lists, that ranking procedure it works a lot better if we have a good representation of a species distribution within the database. So getting more aquatic invasive species would be super helpful for that.
All right, Mitchell. Well, we're going to try to get you some more this summer.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much. If there are no other questions, I'll just check if there's any other business, LISMA business, anything else anyone wants to say before we adjourn. All right, that's it. We're on time. Well, we're 2 minutes over, but that's pretty close. So thank you again, Mitchell. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Feel free to contact Haley or Abby or I at lismaprism@gmail.com anytime. There it is right there, our email. Our next partners meeting is September 17th. We'll send out a notice. And if you want to present or have a topic, it's still available, September 17th. So thank you again, and we'll see you all later. Have a great summer if I don't see you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Take care, everybody.